Hi, I'm James, and this is Groovebox Music Theory. Today I'll teach you how to find and eventually memorize all 12 notes on the keyboard, and I'll teach you how to practice these by using the chord charts, the songs that you pick, and then how you can progress as you improve. I'm going to teach you the concept and then how to practice, but it is on you to put in the time to actually practice and actually learn all of these concepts. Every note has a name, and every chord is named after exactly one note. So if you don't know the names of your notes, it's going to be very hard to find the chords because the rest of the notes in every chord depends on that very first one. So you really got to find that one before you move on. It's also important if you're going to be communicating with other musicians or playing along with songs. It's just a very good foundation to have if you don't already have it. So I'm going to show you exactly how to start off with finding two notes, and then how you can use those two notes to count up to every other note in the chord that you're going to be playing. And I'm going to teach you how you can increase the difficulty so that way it's not just finding the same note the same time each time. And my eventual goal is that you won't need these exercises or tools to find where the notes are. You'll just have them kind of memorized by playing along to some songs that you want to learn. The good news though also is that you don't have to memorize all 12 notes before you move on to the next lessons. Feel free to get the start of this, get a few lessons in or a few practice sessions in, and then you can feel free to move on to the next lesson, which is about fifths. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go to the keyboard. So just like I mentioned, each chord is named after one note, and that note is called the root note. You could think of it like the roots of a tree. Just like a whole tree grows from the root, the rest of the chord is relative to that root note. So whether I'm playing C major, C diminished seventh, or whatever it might be, all I know is that C is in the chord because that is the named note and that is the root. So that means it's definitely going to be played. Just to make my point, here's a C major. And then here is a C diminished seventh, which has no notes in common with the C major aside from C. But they're both named after C, so I know that the root is C and there's going to be a C in the chord. But if you don't know the names of the notes, then it's going to be really hard to figure out the other notes in a chord. So let's talk about how you would learn those. Each note on the piano has a name and they repeat. So these white keys are all named after a letter. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. After that, the notes repeat. So we have an A over here, and then on the other side of this A, we have a G. So those are the white keys. But 7 is a lot to memorize at once. So I'm just going to give you 2 to remember, and then I'm going to teach you how you could figure out any other note by just remembering where those 2 notes are. So if you look at the black keys on the keyboard, you'll notice that there are these groups of 2 and groups of 3, which means that there are a couple notes that are white keys that have no black key to the left of them. So you notice that, for instance, this black key is between these 2 notes. Between these 2 white keys, though, there is no black key. So we're going to be looking to these spots as our way of kind of getting oriented and figuring out where we're at on the keyboard. So if we look at these 2 white keys with no black key to the left, that's what I want you to start by memorizing. This one before these 2 black keys, that's C. This one before these 3 black keys is F. 2 comes before 3, C comes before F. So that might be one way that you could remember that. From there, you can remember that each of these white keys is just one note up from A through G. So if I see an E, I could be like, okay, right, here I am, here's my C, because there's no note to the left and there's 2 black keys after. C, D, E. That's my E right there. So this is the process that you would use at first until you get really comfortable and you start figuring out, oh, I can see a G, I can see an A, and hopefully over time you'll become really comfortable with that. And so let's talk about a couple of examples that only use these white keys before I talk about these black keys here. The first example I'll use is the song The One by Taylor Swift. There are 2 chords to the verse here, F major and C major. Like I said, for right now, we're just looking at the note names and ignoring the rest of the chords. So we're just looking for F and C. And thankfully, those are the 2 I just showed us how to find. So F is one of those two keys with with no black key to the left. In fact, it is the one before 3 instead of the one before 2. So it is this white key right here. That's F. C is the other one with no black key to the left. So if I just wanted to play along, I would follow along by just playing the root notes, and I'll talk about where you would go from here. So here's F and here's C. But, you know, the whole point of this is to learn how to count up from those spots. So let's talk about another easy progression that's pretty simple, and will show us just a quick example of counting, which would be Truth Hurts by Lizzo. There's 2 chords in this verse, C major and A minor. So we're looking for C, which is one of the keys with no black key to the left, and then we're looking for A minor. So we could go C, B, A, there's our A minor, or we could go C, D, E, F, G, and A. You could also just go F, G, A. So there's several ways that you could count up from those 2 spots or count down to figure out the note that you're looking for, so that you can get oriented on the keyboard. But of course, not every chord starts on a white key. There are these black keys here as well. So just like there are these 7 repeating white keys, there are 5 repeating black keys. And I'm going to give you a kind of weird way of thinking about them. So anytime you see a sharp or a flat, the sharp is the symbol that looks like a pound or a hashtag. The flat looks kind of like a lowercase b. Anytime you see those, it's referring to a black key. And each of the black keys is named after the white keys that are beside it. So each black key has 2 different names. You don't have to fully commit this to memory, just know that, for example, let's find that this is F, like we've established. This black key here is F sharp. One way you could think of it is sharp has an R. R is the first letter of the word right. So if it's F sharp, I find F, then I go to the right, R sharp. Yes, there is such a thing as F flat, but I will leave that to people who are smarter than me, like Adam Neely. I won't be talking about it. I'm just going to be talking about these black keys that you can actually see here. Like I said, though, this isn't just F flat, or F sharp, though. If we are coming from G, and we have G flat, flat has an L, left begins with L, G is right here, and then the black key to the left is right here. So this key is both F sharp and G flat. From here, you could figure out any chord, or any root note to any chord that you want to figure out if you just use that little counting method, and then you have the sharps and flats in mind. So let's go ahead and look at a slightly more complicated progression. We're going to be doing Video Games by Lana Del Rey, which has the following chord progression for the verse. F sharp minor, A, F sharp minor, A, C sharp minor, and D. So that's a lot of sharps. That would have been very scary to me when I was first starting out. So let's find our F, which is one of the 2 white keys with no black key to the left of it. It's not this because there's only 2 after it, and that's C. This is F. So F sharp has an R. So here's F sharp to the right. So all we're doing is this is the root of F sharp minor right here. Next we're finding A. So we'll go back to F, G, A. Then it plays those again. C sharp minor, we'll go to our C. Sharp, R is to the right. And then D, C, and D. So if I pick that out, I could gradually... So taking the songs that you are going to be learning in this lesson and you're going to be practicing, look at the chord chart and find the root notes. At first, you may need to count up and find them, but after a while, you should be able to find exactly where the root notes are. And you should be able to get a good sense of how to go back and forth between them and play them multiple times. Once you figure that out, I would start playing along to the studio version and just try to play. Every time that you hear what might sound like a chord change, try to play the root of it. Your chord chart should match up with it. And then eventually, I suggest that you add some rhythmic variation. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything amazing, but if you're able to get used to kind of improvising rhythmically while playing in time with the song, that's going to get you really far, and it's going to make the rest of the series a lot easier for you. The last thing I would do would be, I would find other places that the root notes appear. So like I said, these patterns repeat. So, yes, this is an F sharp, so's this, so is that. So I could practice playing the same root notes but in different parts across the keyboard. So I could go F sharp, A, F sharp, A, C sharp, D. That's really extreme, and that won't match the studio version, but my point is that if you can get really familiar with finding these notes anywhere on the keyboard, it's going to help you a whole lot. So, why do they repeat multiple times? Well, I'm going to use a certain term for this. If you'll remember, there are 7 notes. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That means this 8th note is a repeat of that first. So these are called octaves, because 8. So I'm going to be talking about playing these notes in different octaves, and that's what I mean. So this is F sharp in 3 different octaves, A in 3 different octaves, C sharp in 3 different octaves, and then D in 3 different octaves. Hopefully that makes some sense. So this is going to be a placeholder for future lessons because technically you can't play something different than the root note, but in general I'm going to use this space to talk about what happens and what does it sound like if you don't do what is being described in the song that you're playing along to. Well, this technically can't happen because if you change the root note and if you play something in its place, it's usually so important that you would use a different chord name to describe the section. So you don't need to know any of this, but just to illustrate the point, and this will all make sense by the end of this series, if I take a C major chord, which is C, E, and G, if I keep these 2 notes, which are all but the root of C major, and I instead play just this note right here, which is only slightly up from that C, this is a C sharp, that C was so important that we would actually call this a C sharp diminished chord because it has its own name and it has its own kind of feeling compared to C major. And similarly, if we take this C and we move it down to B, this is actually technically an E minor chord, which I'll talk about later. So it's not that you can't play a different note for the root note. It's just that it's so important that if you really want to communicate what you were playing to another musician or to yourself in the future, you would probably pick a different name for that chord that's a little bit more specific. Okay, so that's it for the root notes. Next time we're going to add the most important note in any major, minor, 7th, or suspended chord, and that is the 5th. So look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for watching, and please let me know if you have any questions.